In the land of beer and bratwurst, tea is not necessarily the first thing that comes to mind. But even in Germany, people drink tea, have a tea ceremony, and of course, their own sausage to accompany their tea. Now let's see how subtle we can be with the word tea.
Welcome to YD. Why do Germans do things the way they do?
Let's start with the word Tee, in English, tea. Have you noticed that, unlike coffee, there are mainly two word stems worldwide for the products of the tea plant, Camellia sinensis, one meaning tea or something similar, and one meaning chai or something similar? The background for this is the regional Chinese word for tea, which is in the region where the Dutch exported tea from China was te, while on the land road or in the ports from which the Portuguese exported tea, it was che or chai. Thus, the Dutch te became the German tea, or correspondingly the English tea. What is tea called in your language? Write it in the comments. If we are to be completely accurate, tea is always a product of the tea plant, which means black tea, green tea, or white tea. However, we Germans don't see it that narrowly and call pretty much any hot drink that is infused tea, even if it would be more correct to call it infusion, but nobody says that unless they are really great influencer. For the average German, there is also fruit tea or herbal tea. So, if we refer to all these drinks historically as tea, then herbal tea were already known in ancient times. From then on, well into Middle Ages, they were mainly administered as medicine. The healing properties of chamomile, sage, fennel, thyme, and nettles have been known for a long time. These beverages were not drunk for pleasure, but for health reasons. This remains the case until the 17th century, when the Dutch began importing tea from China around 1610. From there, trade initially began along the coast and northern countries. If we now look at real tea, and black tea in particular, there is a region in Germany that perhaps consumes the most black tea in the world. East Frisia is famous for its tea culture, as you can see in this video, and this tea culture is now an intangible cultural heritage. Previously, as was often the case, people drank a lot of beer, but tea was cheaper. Tea quickly became very popular, which not everyone liked. After all, it was an imported product, which meant that money went abroad and did not stay in the country with the brewers and the corresponding taxes. Almost parallel to the spread of the potato, tea consumption also spread in East Frisia in the 18th century, which belonged to Prussia. However, as the Royal Prussian Asian Company failed and tea imports continued to be handled by the Dutch East India Company, Prussia wanted to reduce imports. There were suggestions to switch to other infusions or even return to beer, and even bans on imports, which, however, led to increased smuggling. The period from 1778 to 1780 is also known as the Tea War. However, both tea and coffee drinking were so widespread among the people that the Prussian king relented and allowed imports and tea drinking again. After the conquest by Napoleon and the continental blockade, smuggling increased again. On the other hand, numerous tea trading houses were founded as a result. Well-known examples include the Bunting Group and the Ostfriesische Teegesellschaft with its Messmer brand, but also Teekanne from Düsseldorf. It is said that 75% of black tea imported into Germany is still drunk in East Frisia. The numerous fruit teas and herbal teas were originally alternatives when imported teas were not available. This is also a difference between medicinal teas and herbal teas. Medicinal teas are still medicinal teas with corresponding active ingredients and nowadays corresponding regulations, as was actually already the case in medieval monastic medicine. Herbal teas can also contain peppermint, sage, or fennel, but with fewer active ingredients than are necessary for a medicinal tea. In addition to well-known medicinal herbs, fruits such as rose hips, apples, and oranges were also used. Nowadays, of course, there are very special flavors such as Turkish apple or Mediterranean peach, hot love, and almost anything else you can imagine. Soluble tea or instant tea, also known as Krümeltee, crumbs tea, has been around for a long time. Originally, it contained a lot of sugar and could be infused with cold or hot water and drunk straight away without having to steep first. Because it was also marketed as children's tea and caused damage due to its high sugar content, the Bundesgerichtshof, Germany's Federal Court of Justice, even dealt with it in 1991. Young children in particular should not drink sweetened teas, and certainly not from baby bottles. And now let's move on to sausage, Teewurst. It originated in Hinterpommern, Father Pomerania, in what was then Prussia, where the town of Rügenwalde was located, now Darwowo in Poland. A sausage manufacturer had been producing the sausage since 1874 using a recipe that his wife had brought with her into the marriage. They were looking for a name for the sausage made of lean pork, pork belly, and lean beef, which was often eaten with afternoon tea. It eventually became known as Teewurst. Rügenwalder Teewurst may only be produced by companies that had manufactured it in Rügenwalde at the time and were forced to flee after the end of Second World War. And indeed, in some places, small sandwiches with Teewurst are still served with tea, making it a savory alternative to coffee and cake in the afternoon. What is your favorite type of tea? Remarks, additions, and comments in the comments. Thank you for your attention. See you in the next video.